Good morning, everybody. I will call the Board of Examiners meeting to order. The Attorney General is participating telephonically. The Secretary of State is present in Las Vegas. Madam Secretary, can you hear us loud and clear?
Yes, I can, Governor.
All right, thank you. Wow, the sound is really good. So that's, that's great. Before I take public comment, I know that there was a concern about the posting with regard to the notice and agenda for this meeting. There was inadvertently, the posting and agenda was not posted in this building. However, I've asked the Deputy Attorney General to ensure that we are in compliance with the open meeting law. So, Madam Attorney General, if you would provide your comments, please.
Caroline Bateman for the record. That's correct, Mr. Governor. The open meeting law encapsulated in NRS 241 requires posting at 3 prominent places in addition to either the prominent place of business of the board or the building at which the meeting will take place. All those requirements have been met, and so the meeting can go forward without violating the open meeting law.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bateman. Let's proceed with public comment. Is there any member of the public here in Carson City that would like to provide public comment to the board? Is there anyone present in Las Vegas that would like to provide public comment?
I see no one, Governor.
All right. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Before I proceed with the meeting, I made some comments yesterday at the Board of Transportation meeting, which I had the privilege of chairing with regard to the tragedy in Las Vegas. I know many of you or your employees in your respective departments were helpful and provided assistance to their families, their survivors, and their families and friends. And I personally want to thank you all for what you've done. Obviously, everybody's still working through this, and there's a lot of healing to be done, and people are going to need you all, and they're going to need the people in your state agencies. So without a doubt, I know that you will be empathetic, you will be compassionate, you will go the extra mile to help these people that have experienced this. I think you can all agree with me that what they're experiencing is unimaginable, and that even for those of us that weren't there but have seen things, it just, it's just, as I said, that it's really important as public servants that we all step up and do whatever it takes to help them out. So I personally want to thank you all for that, and obviously to keep everybody that's been affected by this in your thoughts and prayers. So let's move on to agenda item number 3, which is the approval of the September 12, 2017 meeting minutes. Have the members had an opportunity to review the minutes, and are there any changes?
No changes, Governor, and I move for approval of the minutes from September 12th, 2017.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Secretary of State has moved for approval of the meeting minutes of September 12, 2017. The Attorney General has seconded the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 That motion passes 3-0. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is request to purchase state vehicles. Mr. Wells, good morning.
Good morning, Governor and members of the board. The item 4 includes 5 requests totaling 106 vehicles. The first request is from the Department of Administration Enterprise IT Services Division to replace a pickup that has met the age and/or mileage requirements in the state administrative manual. This vehicle was included in the agency's legislatively approved budget. The second request from Fleet Services will procure 14 vehicles to provide to agencies under the lease purchase program. This includes 4 sedans and 10 SUVs, which were included in the agency's legislatively approved budgets, but somehow were not included in the Fleet Services budget. So this item is subject to the approval of a work program at the IFC meeting that will occur next week. The third request is also from Fleet Services to replace 83 agency vehicles under the lease purchase program that have met the age and/or mileage requirements. They are inclusive of 47 sedans, 4 pickups, 29 SUVs, and 3 vans. These vehicles were included in both the agencies and Fleet Services' respective budgets. The fourth request from Fleet Services will replace 5 agency vehicles which were totaled in accidents. This request is for 3 sedans and 2 SUVs and is subject to approval of 2 work programs at the IFC meeting next week. And the last request is from the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources Forestry Division to purchase 3 wildland fire trucks for Douglas, Elko, and Nye counties. This comes from the Wildland Fire Protection Program account and is also subject to an IFC work program that will be approved next week. And there are representatives available to answer any questions board members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. You've been very thorough. I have no questions. Board members, any questions from the Secretary or the Attorney General on this agenda item?
Governor, if I might, I just want to make sure, from past, I remember that any vehicles that were turned in or old, any of the money, does that just go to our general budget, or does that go into the fund for the vehicles replacement? I apologize for not asking beforehand, but if you could just answer that for me, I'd appreciate it, and then I'm ready to move.
Agency-owned vehicle or fleet vehicles that are rented out to the agencies then are sold or traded in. Those are put on auction or transferred to another agency for additional duration of use. But when they are finally disposed of, that money is used to provide funding to pay for future new vehicles through the fleet services.
So it stays, does it go to the general fund? That's what I'm asking, is the mechanism, does it go to the general fund, or does it just stay within the fleet agencies?
It stays within fleet services to purchase vehicles. It does not go back to the
Okay.
general fund.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Governor. And if you're ready for a motion, I'll make a motion to approve 4.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The Secretary of State has moved to approve the request to purchase state vehicles as presented in agenda item number 4. Is there a second?
I second.
Attorney General has seconded the motion. Any questions or discussion on the motion? I hear none. All those in favor say aye.
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 That motion passes 3-0. We will move on to agenda item number 5, which are 2 requests to pay a cash settlement through the Nevada Department of Transportation. Good morning, Director Malfabon and Mr. Gallagher.
Good morning, Governor and board members. NDOT is here to request a settlement for acquisition of property. It looks like it's pronounced Reich, but it's actually Rich Series. That's the first one. So this was related to Project Neon. We're getting to the final completion of acquisition of properties related to this major project in Las Vegas. It consisted of 0.44 acres. It had a 24-unit studio apartment building on it. We worked very hard to reach a settlement on this. It was one of the issues that was difficult to deal with was the owner said that there was a lost opportunity to place a cell phone tower on their property. We didn't agree with that, but nonetheless, we negotiated what we felt was a reasonable settlement. The initial date of value was July of 2015, and we had estimated the property value at 1.16 million. But as we got closer to making the determination whether to go to court, we checked with our former chief right-of-way agent. He felt that the exposure was going to be higher had we gone to court, even without that issue of the cell tower being addressed. So we continued negotiations and reached a conclusion of negotiations with this request for an additional amount of money, $749,300, for a total amount of $1.7 million for this property. We had previously deposited $950,700 with the court, and we'll seek full reimbursement from the Federal Highway Administration for this expense.
And just for the record, Mr. Director Malfabon, do you believe that this settlement is in the best interests of the state?
Yes, Governor.
And perhaps Mr. Gallagher, and you already anticipate my question, but it's in the best interest of the state, but it also will save us attorney fees and save us from exposure to attorney's fees if we weren't successful in litigation. And what would you estimate those attorney's fees to be?
For the record, Dennis Gallagher, counsel for the department. I would estimate, Governor, attorney's fees cost on both sides, because as you know, we're responsible for certain costs and fees for the other side, would be in the neighborhood of at least $200,000. Like to emphasize, this is an all-inclusive settlement, so it's for the property, it's for the alleged lost opportunity with the cell tower. And I'd just like to point out that the state had moved for summary judgment on that issue. The trial court denied it, so it'd be a question of fact for the jury. And these cell towers, the lost opportunity, the tower can have more than one cell on it. So depending on what they might be able to convince the jury of, be it 1 or 8 cells, the value of that would range from just under $200,000 to about $1.8 million. So with that unknown out there, I believe the department decided that this would be an opportune case to settle and move on.
Ms. Gallagher, thank you. And those are some really important facts that I think further justify this settlement. So well done. Thank you. Board members, any questions with regard to agenda item 5A and this settlement with the Rich Series LLC?
None, Governor.
Let's
No,
proceed.
Governor.
Proceed with the second one, Rudy, please.
Thank you, Governor. For the record, Rudy Malfabon, Director of NDOT. This is related to acquisition of property owned by Ranch Properties LLC, again associated with Project Neon in Las Vegas. It was acquisition of 6 parcels. They were single-story, 4-plex apartment buildings on 1.02 acres in total. We had an appraisal back in February of 2015 for $1.5 million, which we updated for the statutory date of value in December of 2015 to $1.78 million. The landowners wanted, they said that their property is worth $3 million, so we continued negotiations. As in the case of rental property, we have our methodology for assessing the value of the property based on the income and capitalization rate. The owner disagreed, but we eventually agreed to an amount for a settlement of $2.2 million, and that's in it $700,000 of additional new money in addition to the $1.5 million previously deposited with the court. And again, we will seek reimbursement from the Federal Highway Administration for this property acquisition related to a federalized project.
You think it's a good result, Rudy?
Definitely, it's in the best interest of the state. I think that we always run the risk when we go to a jury trial, those additional legal expenses and a jury verdict that might not be is in our favor. And Dennis Gallagher, our Chief Deputy AG, can answer any legal questions.
Well, not to mention, I mean, I know it's certainty, and you've got a budget that you have to work with regard to property acquisition, and when you have outstanding cases and don't know, and know that there's could be larger exposure than what you could settle for, you just need to be able to move forward. I know the project's going well; it's more than half done and on schedule and on budget, so that's a good thing. Mr. Gallagher, anything you wish to add?
Governor, just for the record, as the director has indicated, our exposure in this case would have been well over $3 million, so we believe that this settlement is in the best interest of both the property owner and the taxpayers of the state of Nevada.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. I'm always thinking to myself when you guys come up, you're calling the game and you're doing the color commentary. But it works out really well. You're a good team. Board members, any questions for Mr. Gallagher or Mr. Malfabon with regard to agenda item 5B?
No, Governor, thank you.
No, Governor, I move to approve.
The Attorney General has moved to approve the request to pay a cash settlement as presented in Agenda Item 5A and B. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Governor.
Second by the Secretary of State. Any questions or discussion on the motion? You hear none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Did you say aye, Madam Secretary?
Yes, I did. Aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. I just want to make sure for
Okay.
purposes of the record. So that motion passes 3-0. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll move to agenda item number 6, which are authorizations to contract with a current and/or former state employee. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. There are 6 requests to contract with current and/or former employees pursuant to NRS 333.705 subsection 1 this morning. The first request is from the Department of Transportation to allow a contracted vendor to use a former employee on a project that was awarded to that vendor for the Northern Nevada traffic study. The former employee retired in July of this year and did not have any influence or authority over the awarding of the contract with or management of the contract with this vendor. The second request is from the Department of Health and Human Services Division of Aging and Disability Services to contract with a former UNLV professor to provide pediatric physical therapy to infants and toddlers with disabilities for the Early Intervention Services Program. The contract would be for approximately 30 hours per week from October 10th, 2017 through June 30th of 2018 at a rate of $65 per hour. The third request is from State Purchasing, who contracts with Allied Universal Security Services through a master services agreement to provide uniformed security guards to various state agencies. This request for Allied Universal to use a former employee who left service in January of 2017 to perform these services. Allied Universal also uses these employees on other contracted jobs with non-state of Nevada employers. The fourth and fifth requests are from the Department of Health and Human Services Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy to contract with 2 current University of Nevada, Reno graduate student workers to conduct interpretation and statistical analysis on Medicaid claims data. The contracts would be for approximately 20 hours per week each from October 16th, 2017 through April 16th of 2018 at rates of $19.57 and $21.30 per hour respectively. They're bringing them in at 2 different classifications. And the final request is from the Department of Corrections to contract with a former employee to provide training for a replacement. The former employee retired in July and would train her replacement for a period not to exceed 30 days at a rate of $30.17 per hour. And there are representatives available to answer any other questions board members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. And these are pretty straightforward, nothing or routine that we've seen before, correct?
No, these are all fairly routine requests.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. I have no questions. Board members, any questions with regard to agenda item number 6?
None, Governor.
Okay. If there are no questions, the chair will accept a motion for approval.
So moved.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The Secretary of State has moved to approve the authorizations to contract with the current and/or former state employees presented in agenda item number 6. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by the Attorney General. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Hear none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Attorney General, did you vote aye?
I apologize. Aye.
Okay, thank you. So that motion passes unanimously. We'll move to agenda item number 7, request for approval of an allocation from the IFC contingency account. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. Item 7 is a request pursuant to NRS 353.268 for an allocation from the Interim Finance Committee for the Department of Public Safety Division of Emergency Management in the amount of $845,510. This is to cover projected costs of providing National Guard support for Hurricanes Harvey in Texas and Maria in Puerto Rico, as well as to assist with wildfires in the state of Oregon. This is subject to approval by the Interim Finance Committee at their meeting next week. The first request for Hurricane Harvey was reduced from the original request based on the number of hours that the aircraft was used. The second request for the Oregon wildfires, I believe, has ended now, and then there may be a change or revision to that amount at the IFC meeting next week. And then the third request for assistance in Puerto Rico is, I believe, still ongoing.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Caleb, is that you in Las Vegas?
Yes, Governor.
Yeah. Will you walk us through a little more, with a little more specifics as to the nature of these? And I'm in full support of them. I don't want anyone to get the wrong impression. And also whether we're eligible for any type of reimbursement.
Yes, Governor, and Justin Luna from my office is available at the desk for discussions regarding any of the financial matters. Governor, members of the board, Caleb Cage, Chief of the Division of Emergency Management here in Las Vegas for this. The state of Nevada is a participant in the Emergency Management Assistance Compact, which is an interstate compact. I believe all 50 states and the additional territories are a part of, that allows states to request through the EMAC process resources from the state of Nevada in response to emergencies and disasters in their jurisdictions. I'll note that currently, right now, I believe the state of Nevada has facilitated 4 or 5 EMAC requests on behalf of Clark County in response to the tragic shooting that happened earlier this week. And in addition to this, we work through memorandums of understanding and agreement with neighboring states to support their needs as well. With the incredible number of emergencies and disasters that have happened around the country this year, the state of Nevada, through the Division of Emergency Management, has facilitated these 3 EMAC requests. This is a high number for a year to go through the EMAC process. Again, that's Emergency Management Assistance Compact. But it is nonetheless, it was meeting needs for states that were and are currently recovering from or responding to significant disasters, as you'll see listed here: Harvey, wildfires in Oregon, and of course the hurricane in Puerto Rico as well. These are reimbursable through FEMA. Just to make sure I'm correct on that, these are reimbursable through FEMA. Sometimes, however, this can take several years. So this will allow state agencies to, particularly the National Guard, to close out its budget within our budget cycle and then receive reimbursement in the future. Justin, any corrections to any of that?
No corrections.
Caleb, and do you know, or do either of you know what the time frame is in terms of that reimbursement?
Justin Luna with the Division of Emergency Management. Typically, the EMAC process allows 45 days for a reimbursement process. However, there is a provision within the EMAC that any extreme circumstances may cause delays if there are funding delays. But typically, the process is 45 days to get reimbursement, depending on federal availability of federal funding and things like that.
And I don't have any other questions, but Caleb and everyone at Department of Emergency Management, I mean, this has been a year like no other with regard to the floods and the fires and what's happened in Las Vegas and what's happened with the hurricanes. And you all have stepped up every time and just done an extraordinary job. And I know the amount of hours that people have put in that they'll never get paid for, likely, but truly want to appreciate your hard work and your professionalism and everybody on your team that really has done this seamlessly. I mean, we've been timely with all our reimbursement requests. We've been prompt with our resource requests. We've been on the ground and on the ball with regard to all of these. And at least in my 7 years, I can't recall this many things happening in this short amount of time. And so I just wanted to publicly thank you for your hard work and your commitment and your dedication and everything that you've done.
Thank you, Governor.
All right, board members, any questions with regard to agenda item number 7?
No questions, but Governor, if I could just make a comment, I want to thank you for your leadership, and I want to thank Caleb and his group for the services that they've provided, not only in our state for what we've needed, but to go to all of these other states to help them. And We get to work with him on some other issues through my divisions, but I just want to thank you very much. And again, thank you, Governor. I think it's really important for people to understand that other states do send National Guard to help, and I don't think everybody knows that. I don't know if you always get the credit that you deserve, but we have some wonderful people in this state that are willing to go out and do that. So thank you very much for what you do. Thank you, Governor.
No, thank you, Madam Secretary. And, Nevada has been the beneficiary of a lot of assistance from other states. So when the request comes our way, we don't hesitate. I mean,
Yes.
we'll find a way to make it work. And, I'm biased, but I think we have an amazing National Guard as well that trains for these things. And, I know that there were some logistical functions that our Guard performs that were extremely helpful in Texas and Puerto Rico. And so time is obviously of the essence when people are undergoing, the experiences that they're having as a result of these natural disasters. So again, it's just, unfortunately, we've gotten very good at what we do because we've had to do it so often. But again, it's just extraordinary. All right, any other questions or comments with regard to agenda item number 7? I hear none. Is there a motion to approve the request for approval of an allocation from the IFC contingency account as presented in agenda item number 7?
Move for
Move to
approval.
approve.
Attorney General has moved for approval. Madam Secretary, may I take you as a second?
Yes, you may, sir.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second for approval of the request. Any questions or comments on the motion?
Mr. Governor, if I may just clarify for the record that the motion includes a recommendation to the IFC to approve the full amount of $845,000 and $845,510.
Of course. So it says the division requests an allocation of $845,510 from the IFC contingency account to cover immediate costs associated with emergency management assistance compact activations of the Nevada National Guard in support of recent requests for assistance from Texas, Oregon, and Puerto Rico. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 That motion passes 3-0. Thank you very much. We'll move to agenda item number 8, which is approval of master lease agreements. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. Item 8 includes 2 requests from the Department of Administration Enterprise IT Services Division to amend existing lease agreements. The first is a master lease agreement with Dell Financial Services for mid-range equipment for state applications. This amendment extends the lease through January 1st, 2022 at a cost of $2.9 million due to the replacement and expansion of storage capacity for state data. The second request would amend the master lease agreement with IBM for mainframe storage, equipment, software, and services. This amendment would increase the cost by $9.2 million due to the upgrade and replacement of existing storage, which includes additional encryption and security for state data, and there are representatives available from the department to answer any questions board members may have.
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Wells. Board members, any questions on agenda item number 8?
Mr. Governor.
There are no questions. The chair will accept a motion.
So move for approval of master lease agreements, number 8.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The Secretary of State has moved to approve the master lease agreements presented in agenda item number 8. Is there a second?
I second.
Attorney General has seconded the motion. Any questions or comments on the motion? I hear none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 That motion passes 3-0. We'll move on to agenda item number 9, review and consideration of a victims of crime appeal. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. NRS 217 regulates the compensation for certain victims of criminal acts. Victims apply to the program and a determination is made as to whether or not the victim is entitled to compensation from the Victims of Crime program. A victim whose claims are denied can appeal to a hearings officer to have their claims reconsidered, and the victim or the clerk of the Board of Examiners can appeal the hearings officer decision to an appeals officer. And finally, both the hearings officer and the appeals officer are under the jurisdiction of the Department of Administration. Upon the appeals officer's decision, NRS 217.117 subsection 3 allows the applicant or the clerk of the Board of Examiners to appeal a decision made by the appeals office to this board. The Board of Examiners can render a decision in the case, or it can decide to hold a future hearing on the matter. The item for consideration today is a review of the record of an appeals officer decision for applicant Charmaine Deanna. Ms. Deanna was notified of the meeting today, and within 15 days of today's hearing, the board needs to render its decision on the case. The board can either affirm, modify, or reverse the decision of the appeals officer, or it can decide to hold a hearing on the matter within 30 days, in which case it would reconsider the evidence provided by both the applicant and the program. And I believe there are representatives from the victims of crime if there are any additional questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else that the victims of crime entity would like to present, or do you think is important for us to know?
No, Governor, I think that we've provided the complete record, so unless you'd like us to summarize, we don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. And has Ms. Dana communicated at all or indicated that she wanted to participate in this hearing to you?
No, she's not.
Okay, so you've heard no telephone calls, no letters, no?
No, sir.
Okay. You have? So what have we received?
Dale Ann Lucy for the record. I spoke to Ms. Deanna on the phone and informed her of our meeting today, and she asked if she needed to be present, and I said she did not, but we would send her a letter on the board's decision upon the meeting's conclusion.
So did she indicate that she wasn't going to participate?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have all the papers in front of us, but I think the seminal point in here is that the request for, that was made by Ms. Dana was filed more than 2 years subsequent to the September 22nd, 2014 accident. And so you have to make the claim within that 2-year period. And also, at least the way the decision of the appeals officer indicates that Ms. Dana was riding her bike when she hit a car. The driver of the car stopped his vehicle to render aid to Ms. Dana. Ms. Dana was found to be at fault. And therefore, the September 22nd, 2014 accident is outside the scope of the Victims of Crime program coverage. And essentially, the conclusion or the order was based on the foregoing findings of fact and conclusions of law. The determination of the Victims of Crime program dated December 14, 2016, and the subsequent March 24, 2017 decision and order of the hearing officer are affirmed. So board members, I don't know if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make, but my position is that I will support an affirmation of the decision of the appeals officer. Madam Secretary, or Mr. Secretary, or Mr. Attorney General, any questions or comments?
I have no comments, Governor.
Is there a motion?
No, Governor, I'm in the same place. I move to affirm the board's decision.
So Attorney General has moved to affirm the decision of the appeals officer, which was filed on August 2nd, 2017, and is part of our record. Madam Secretary, do you have a second?
Yes, I do. I second that, Governor.
Secretary of State has seconded the motion. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Hear none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 3-0. So we move on to agenda item number 10, which is approval of proposed leases. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you, Governor.
Agenda item number 10, Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. There are 6 leases in agenda item number 10 this morning for approval by the board. Lease number 2 is retroactive to July 1st of 2015. Other than that, no additional information has been requested by any of the members.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. I have no questions on agenda item number 10. Board members, do you have any questions?
I have no questions, Governor. I'll move for approval.
Secretary of State has moved to approve the leases presented in agenda item number 10, 1 through 6. Is there a second?
I second.
Attorney General has seconded the motion. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Hear none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 3-0. We'll move on to agenda item number 11, contracts. Mr. Wells.
Governor, before you go, could I make a disclosure here?
Yes.
Thank you. On agenda item 11, contract number 35, I believe that I am independent judgment of a reasonable person in a situation that would be materially affected my relationship with Opportunity Village, which is that I am a board member of Opportunity Village. And based on the nature of my relationship with Opportunity Village, I am not going to recuse from voting on contract number 35 of the agenda item 11. And I now ask our Deputy Attorney General if that disclosure is satisfactory under NRS Chapter 281A.
Madam Secretary, as to form, your disclosure is appropriate.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor.
And Madam Secretary, it broke up a little bit. So did you say you are or are not?
I am going to vote.
You are going to vote?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew I was a board member, but it doesn't affect me.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
I understand. It wasn't real clear, so thank you.
Sorry.
All right, Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. There are 56 contracts in agenda item number 11 for approval by the board this morning. Contract number 5 between the Department of Administration, Public Works Division, and TSK Architects is subject to the approval of a restricted IFC contingency fund request that will be heard at the IFC meeting next week. Members have requested additional information on the following. Contract number 1 between the Governor's Office of Science, Innovation, and Technology and E-Rate Central. Contract number 2 between the Office of the Attorney General and the Washoe County Forensic Lab. Contract number 5 between the Department of Information, State Public Works Division, and TSK Architects. Contracts 15, 16, and 17 between the Department of Administration, Public Works Division, and Hirschenau and Klippenstein Architects, Inc. Contracts 18 and 19 between the Department of Information, or Department of Administration, State Public Works Division, and Core Construction Services of Nevada, and Hirschenau and Klippenstein Architects, Inc., and contract number 37 between the Department of Corrections and Core Civic, Inc.
All right, let's begin with contract number 1. Mr. Mitchell, good morning.
Good morning, Governor. Brian Mitchell, Director of the Office of Science, Innovation, and Technology, for the record. This contract is a contract between my office and E-Rate Central, covering broadband planning, mapping, and procurement. My office is responsible for overseeing the state process there. And in your 2016 State Strategic Framework, there are 3 goals related to broadband and increasing broadband access in the state. Particularly, one goal is to increase the percent of schools and libraries that have access to broadband speeds that meet national benchmarks, and also by 2025, connecting all rural hospitals, health clinics, state correctional facilities to a broadband connection sufficient to provide for telehealth services. In the past, my office has been very active in mapping and determining the needs we have, and this contract will help us to go out and solicit the federal funds necessary in order to meet these needs. This contract, in our scope of work that we've negotiated with E-Rate Central, the firm will do community engagement and outreach, a state broadband solutions assessment, statewide K-12 consulting and management, network architecture and solutions assistance, and finally a focus on whole community connectivity. I couldn't be more happy with this contract. We put a solicitation out and got 13 bids back, and this was by far the best contract. The principal and the project manager at the firm were previous senior managers at USAC, which manages all federal broadband funding for schools, and as such, they have an intimate knowledge of how to procure additional federal funding, which will be very important to our state in connecting all of our schools.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mitchell, and you've been very thorough. So what amount of money will we be seeking in those grants to get this paid for?
Brian Mitchell, for the record. The amount of grants depends on the need of the individual school district, and so through our office, in our budget, we have $2 million in matching funds. And those matching funds will be able to solicit on a one-to-one basis additional federal money to draw down federal money for our school districts. And so at minimum, those matching funds will bring in $2 million of additional federal funding for broadband, but the number could be higher depending on the project.
And just out of curiosity, what is the most challenging school district to bring broadband to?
So I think we have significant challenges in many of our rural school districts. Some aspects of each school district are well connected, depending on the proximity to a major highway such as I-80. However, there's schools, for example, in Gerlach, which is in Washoe County. So most of Washoe County is pretty well connected because it's in the Reno-Sparks area. Gerlach, on the other hand, is not, and that's one of our big projects. There's other schools for example, in the Elko County School District and in Ruby Valley. That's an area in southern Elko County that is not very well connected either. And so, those kind of projects will be a focus because there's, without the federal funding, it would be very expensive for these school districts to connect those students.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members on contract number 1?
No, Governor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Okay, we'll move to contract number 2, which is the Attorney General's Office and the Washoe County Forensic Lab.
Good morning, Governor Sandoval, Attorney General Laxalt, Secretary of State Zagaski, Nick Trutanich on behalf of the Attorney General's Office. Present with me today is our CFO, Christian Schonlau, and Washoe County Lab Unit Supervisor, Dr. Lisa Smith-Rome. Christian Schonlau is going to be describing the contract for you.
Good morning, board members. Thank you, Christian Schonlau, for the record. So the contract before you furthers the Attorney General's commitment to testing sexual assault kits in the state of Nevada. Since taking office, the Attorney General has prioritized this issue with additional funding and resources for state and local law enforcement agencies to ensure victims of sexual assault obtain justice. Funding from favorable settlements and federal sources has helped the Attorney General to facilitate the testing of decades of backlogged sexual assault kits. As a result, 3,744 of the approximately 8,200 kits have been tested or have been sent to labs, and 1,523 of them have been tested to completion. The result has been approximately 200 CODIS hits with 12 prosecutions. So this contract helps to prevent the backlog from growing again. Funding in this contract will allow for the Washoe County Sheriff's Crime Lab to expand their lab, hire more staff, and outsource additional kits not funded through the sources mentioned previously. This contract is partially funded by the appropriation in AB 97 and is further funded through favorable settlements obtained through the Attorney General's tenure. We are happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Well done. This is incredibly important, and I know we all want to get to zero and get caught up. So, my kudos to the Attorney General's Office, to the Attorney General for making this happen, and keep up the good work. I look forward to hearing what the progress is hereafter. Any other questions or comments from board members? I'll take that as a no. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll move to contract number 5, which is Department of Administration. And Tate Snyder Kimsey Architects. And essentially, I asked for this to be heard only because it involves the UNLV Medical School, and I think it shows that there's a lot of positive progress that's going on at the medical school. Not only is their first class attending coursework right now, but now we're starting the planning for the building. So if you could give us some highlights of what that includes, please.
Not, okay. Thank you. Good morning, Governor and members of the board. My name is Chris Schmitz, the Deputy Administrator for the State Public Works Division. This first contract that we're bringing before you right now is a design contract with Tate Schneider Kimsey of Henderson, Nevada. It's for the architectural services to design, provide contract documents, and construction administration for the new medical school. The school, the project itself, it was actually funded in SB 553, and we've established the scope of the project, the schedule, the site location, in preparation for the IFC meeting on October 19th. And that's a 220,000 square foot building. It would be 9 stories high. It's located on a 9.2 acre site at 625 Shadow Lane in Las Vegas. We anticipate a project cost of $236 million. The construction cost will be somewhere around $183 million. It'll be approximately $19 to $20 million worth of FF&E that will go into that project. And as I mentioned, the total project cost of $236 million. I believe that UNLV will be presenting the financial aspect of this, the fundraising efforts at the IFC meeting, and they've included some additional money for financing costs that would total $250 million. The firm Tate Schneider Kimsey was actually selected by UNLV to do the programming and some conceptual design, and then the construction manager at risk, Whiting Turner, was also selected by UNLV to provide cost input for the project. The State Public Works Division has elected to retain both of those firms for continuity. They've developed a rapport with the medical school at UNLV, so we're staying with those firms and negotiated these contracts to our standards.
No, thank you. Moving right along. So congratulations on that. How long will this design process take? And assuming the money is raised for construction, when would the earliest time be when they could commence with construction?
Yeah. So towards that end, Governor, the schedule, we're planning on a notice to proceed at the end of 2019 for a start construction, December 19. And then if everything goes the way we think it will go, then we would finish around May of 2022. And the design would start as soon as IFC gave us authorization to proceed. We put the construction contract, or the design contract in to the Board of Examiners now ahead of the IFC, but we would not act on this until IFC authorized us to proceed. And the reason we did that, the inflation in Southern Nevada right now is about $1 million a month. And so we're very mindful of that. And as soon as IFC, if they approve it, we're going to start that day with the design process and hustle right through it.
Thank you. You've been very thorough. I appreciate it. Board members, any questions for contract number 5?
No questions, Governor.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to 15, 16, and 17. Kind of a similar presentation, but this has to do with the National Guard Readiness Center in Las Vegas, as well as the improvements to the Stewart Indian School.
Okay. Again, Governor Chris Schmitz with the State Public Works Division. On the first contract, this would be the one for the North Las Vegas Readiness Center. This is a new contract to provide architectural and engineering services for design development through the construction administration. The schematic design was completed in an earlier project, 15P2. That was a 15 CIP that did the schematic design for this project. So this is a carry-on of that. We're anticipating about a $30 million construction cost for this project. It would construct a 78,000 square foot building just west of I-15, right across from the Speedway Center down in North Las Vegas. This firm was selected because of their previous involvement creating the schematic design, so there's continuity going forward. It's a 40-acre site, and we're anxious to get going on that. Again, the inflation subject to the same kind of inflation.
Are we, I mean, obviously, these are all CIPs from the 2017 legislative session. Are you still confident that we're going to stay within the amount of money that was allotted? I'll take that as a no, huh?
Well, we included 5% inflation in the CIP book, and that's because of that's due to the best information we had at that time, which was July of 2016. Since then, Las Vegas is currently enjoying about 11.5% inflation annually, and Northern Nevada about the same. And so that's nothing that I'm excited about in terms of our position of managing the public, the CIP that was approved. What we're doing is we're aiming for 90% on scope and then trying to build additive alternates so that we have a chance of, and also hustling through the design process. We're looking at CMAR contracts where we get a GMP at the end of, at 100% contract documents, and then we may be asking for a consideration by this board for contracts at special board meetings so that we can get, especially that medical school, these larger construction projects, we may ask for a special meeting so that we can get the thing approved and move right into construction without waiting the normal time frame. Not to be presumptuous, that's just dealing with this inflation that we have in front of us.
No, thank you. And I personally appreciate your sensitivity to that.
Oh, yeah.
And just know, as I think I can speak for the other board members, that if time is of the essence, that this board will cooperate and work with you to get things done.
Thank you very, very much.
All right, one of my favorite places in the state, the Stewart facility. So let's talk about those two projects.
Okay, this third contract is with Hirschnau Klippenstein Architects of Reno, Nevada. And again, what we're doing here is providing architectural and engineering services to rehabilitate the existing roof of the gym out there. And before we put a new roof on it, there's got to be some consideration for the structural condition of that building. If you've been out there, you'll know that there's a significant amount of daylight that you can see through the building. So we selected this architect because in 2005, it was a CIP project 05M46, which rehabilitated 8 of the buildings out there at Stewart. And the gym is one of the last 3 that needs help. And so this project, we retained that firm because of their expertise and familiarity with the campus and with that building. And so what we'll do here is go out there and complete the design and construction and rehabilitate the gym to a place where we can actually use it.
No, and I have been there, and you can see daylight. But so this will also make the determination that we're not putting a brand-new roof on a building that's not capable of being used thereafter, correct? I mean, the building is still sound enough to do the improvements on it.
Yeah. Yes. Part of what the design contemplates is strengthening the masonry walls, putting starch in them, if you will, so that they're stiff, and then putting a new structural diaphragm on top that would transfer lateral or shear loads, wind loads, into the masonry walls effectively so that the building has a functional ability to it. And then once that's done, then we would put the new roof on so that it would be architecturally complete.
Great. All right, board members, any questions with regard to contracts 15, 16, and 17?
None here, Governor.
Hi, Governor.
All right, thank you. And that brings us to 18 and 19. Did you want to come up, Ms. Albertson? I know you do. All right, this has to do with the new Northern Nevada Department of Motor Vehicles building. Okay, please proceed.
Okay. Chris Schimmitz with State Public Works Board. We're very anxious to get started on this project for some of the same reasons that I already explained. It's a 57,000 square foot DMV in South Reno, off of Double Diamond Boulevard. And this project was initially started in 2011. We did conceptual and programming work in the 2011 CIP with Hirschnau Klippenstein. And so this particular contract that's before you is a CMAR, Construction Management at Risk contract with Core Construction, who was selected through the formal process, which is delineated in NRS 341. So what we do here is pick up where we left off in 2011 and design this building so that we can take the load off of Coletti Way.
Yes, thank you, Governor. Again, very excited for this opportunity to provide this new facility to the citizens of Reno. We look forward to getting started on this. As a matter of fact, we're going to Las Vegas on Friday to start the discussions on this and look forward to having this completed on time and on budget.
Thank you. I know there's a lot of anticipation for this project. Yeah. And just to real quickly, I mean, we've always had a great experience with Hirschnau and Klippenstein, the architects, but they've got a lot of projects going on. Do they have the bandwidth to get all this done?
Governor, it looks bad because there's 5 contracts here before you today with this same architectural firm, but it's not as bad as it looks. We've got 95 projects. This firm got 6 of those 95 projects, and we managed to get 5 of them on the agenda before you today. So that's why yes, but to your question, they're a pretty good-sized firm in Reno, one of the largest, and they do have significant horsepower to be able to pull each of these projects to completion.
No, and I wasn't trying to imply anything pejorative, because we see them all the time, and they've done a great job. I don't know if it's exclusive, but they do all the National Guard work, and they've done several public buildings, and we've always had a good result. But you're right, it just gives the impression because they appeared so many times on this agenda, so I thought I'd ask the question. All right, thank you. Oh, wait, sorry. Any questions from the other board members on these, on 18 or 19?
No, Governor.
So, Governor, thank you.
Thank you. That's it. And that brings us to number 37, correct, Mr. Wells? Yeah. That's all we have. Thank you.
We're good?
Yeah, we're good. Good morning, Director Zarenda. Good to see you again. And I mean, this is a topic that came up during the legislature and has come up in our Board of Prison Commission meetings, but this is the contract to provide out-of-state correctional beds for the Nevada Department of Corrections. So please proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Governor. Thank you, General, and thank you, Madam Secretary. First, I want to go over a little bit of the background, just so we have an understanding of this. This was originally reviewed and approved through the governor on the governor's rec budget for 2 reasons. One is to the concern the governor had for the staff safety and morale, and also the inmate safety in the facilities with their increase in population with housing inmates in non-traditional bed spaces. The second was that the governor's concern also with increase in the programming space that was being taken away from the excess population, and what impact that's going to make on the victims in the community with doing best practice programming to change the behaviors of these offenders. If we lose those spaces where we do the programs, it could have a direct impact on the victims in the community. So I thought it was important to say that. Currently, today's population, we're at 13,683, which was the end of the business yesterday. Again, if you didn't get that, was 13,683. Our bed space, if you look at available traditional beds that we could use, which I call usable beds, is 13,361. What that means is we have 322 inmates today that are not sleeping or being housed in traditional bed areas. So those inmates go into day room areas, program areas that we make appropriate housing for, but it takes away program space that we know is going to help get these inmates back into society much better than they came in. Today, I did also, just in case, I had two executives from Core Civic attend the hearing today, just in case any of the board members had any questions specific for them. The contract that we opened up nationally for an RFP was awarded to Core Civic. So I just wanted to make sure that we knew that we had the members there today. An important thing I need to mention too is in next year, 2018, we're going to have 200 beds are going to be taken offline because we have a Building 8 down in Southern Desert Correctional Center that is due for remodeling and repairs, which will go back online. So we're hoping July of 2019, so that we're going to lose 200 bed spaces there. Also, we have 80 beds that are going to be reduced coming in February at the Northern Nevada Correctional Center, which is up here in Carson City, due to an ADA retrofit of all the housing units there. Those beds are going to be offline, a total of 80, going out for 2.5 to 3 years. So that's also going to reduce our traditional bed space that we need to keep the inmates off the program areas. So currently, what I ended up doing too, which I think is important, my Deputy Director of Programs, Kim Thomas, and myself both visited the facility down in Arizona where the inmates will be sent, just to make sure we are good with the programming space, with the housing space, how the grievances work down there, how they would be able to utilize video visiting, making sure that there is communication. It was important for us to see that so that I could feel comfortable that they will be receiving the services that we asked for, but also that we're not going to reduce any of the services for these offenders for reentry back into the community when that point comes. The other important factor with the out-of-state beds, the targeted population that I'm looking at, that we've already identified them, which we're going to be reviewing for the transfers for the exact date. I'm looking at those inmates that are the most disruptive and most dangerous, that are based upon their gang activity, those that are recruiting our population members, those that are extorting, those inmates that are causing disruption and creating a fear factor in the other population. Because when you look at programs, you can't have successful programs if you don't have safe and secure environments. These offenders creating these type of environments here to make it unsafe and make other inmates fear, they do not want to go to programs, and the inmates that do need those programs, that can benefit from those programs, because they're in fear of going to those locations, in fear of being extorted or approached by gang leaders or members. I think it's important, if I make a pact with our staff, that we're not going to tolerate this. We're not going to tolerate any of this behavior by these inmates, that if they want to partake in gang activity, if they want to disrupt the operations of our facilities, they will find themselves going to Arizona, where I can create a better environment here in Nevada for those that really do need the help to get back in the community. So I think that's important. The other factor that we're utilizing for those offenders going out of state are those that are non-residents of the state. What we're doing currently with our programs and our initiatives for reentry, we're trying to connect our communities with those offenders that we know are going to benefit from not only our continuation of our programs, but for our mental health and medical treatments going into our community. If they are our Nevada residents, I need the spaces here in our state to be able to transfer those offenders successfully, and continuity of care going into our community, where those non-residents of our state will not benefit from that. So that's really all I have. I thought it was a way I can explain why this is so important to the state, why this is important to reducing victimization in our community, and that this is just something that it's unfortunate that the state has to even look at this today. But if we're looking at this, I do believe what we're doing in corrections with reducing segregation, with our treatment of mental health, and the way we are releasing offenders into the community a lot safer, with the treatment they will get, will actually benefit down the road by reducing our population eventually, because I know that these proven programs around the country have proven to reduce victimization in the community, which will reduce crime, which means we'll get less inmates down the road coming back into our system.
Thank you, Director Zarenda, and I agree with you. How many beds, for lack of a better term, does this get us? How many individuals will this allow Nevada to transfer to Arizona?
James Renner for the record. It's not as simple as a bed for a bed, because what I'm looking at is it's going to actually give us more beds than 200. Because what I'm doing is since we're targeting those offenders that are the most violent, 90% of those offenders are in some type of a segregation status, which means that they are celled by themselves in a two-person bed. So when I move one of those beds out, it increases, we get bed space for two people. So if I can close a restrictive housing unit, which is a single-celled unit, and double it up, I'll actually getting more appropriate space to be able to put general population inmates. So if I move 50 inmates out of a 100-bed unit to Arizona, I can double up that space, and I can actually get 100 inmates into there, where before there was only 50. So it will help us with the population numbers.
And you said that we're going to be sending Core Civic our most dangerous inmates. They have to take whatever we send them, correct?
James Renner for the record. That is correct, but me personally, I am not going to send any offenders that I know have significant mental health issues, because I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we get them connected back into our community safer while they're here, and it'll keep it closer for me to be able to work with Health and Human Services while they're in our state. And the other population, those that are the most severe medical issues, the same thing. When they go back into our community, I have to have that perfect continuity of care, and it would be negligent if I move them out of state and think that we can do this appropriate. But yes, they will. We've already met with them. They've already taken a look at all of our offenders. They're prepared to take whatever we give them. That's pretty much what they do.
And you're 100% on, with regard to those that do get moved, that they will be treated the same as if they were in Nevada?
James Aranda for the record. That is correct. That's why it was important for me to see it. What I think is also important for people to know too is the agency and the facility they're going to is ACA accredited, which means that they are followed by a higher standard, which is monitored by the national ACA to make sure that they are in compliance with their standards, which means that the treatment, the programs, the grievances, the out of cell time, all that has to be approved and reviewed and audited by the Association for Correctional ACA standards to make sure that they are in line to their to be accredited. So they are certain, the ACA, that they meet their standards, and so am I.
And my last question is, if you have an inmate in Arizona and they become parole eligible, will they be moved back to Nevada for a parole hearing? What are the mechanics of that?
James Aranda for the record. We will do the parole hearings will be held in Arizona through video, but if they're approved for parole, we're going to get them as soon as possible thereafter back to the state to have an appropriate parole plan set up, but they will actually be doing their hearings down there if it comes to that. I'm not looking at any inmate, sending any inmate down there that are getting near to the end of their sentences. If they are low security inmates, they're more appropriate to leave in our institutions, but they will be doing the hearings actually from Arizona.
Thank you. That's all I have. Board members, do any of you have any questions with regard to contract number 37?
No, Governor, I do not.
No, thank you, Governor.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Well done. All right. Is that all of them, Mr. Wells? All right. So if there are no further questions with regard to agenda item number 14, Chair, 11. Oops. All right, let me rephrase that. If there are no other questions with regard to agenda item number 11, the chair will accept a motion to approve contracts 1 through 56.
I second.
Attorney General has moved for approval. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Secretary of State has seconded the motion. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then just for purposes of the record, Madam Secretary, we'll incorporate by reference your comments with regard to contract number 35.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move then to agenda item number 12, master service agreements. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. There are 10 master service agreements in Agenda Item 12 for approval by the board this morning. Agreements 1 through 5, 8, and 9 are for $0. These MSA documents establish the terms and conditions between the state and the vendor. Agencies will then access those agreements by submitting a work order with a scope of work and price, and then each of those work orders will be subject to the BOE thresholds for approval, which is what you will see under Agenda Item number 13. But for the MSAs on this item, members have requested additional information on number 7 between the state and Switch LTD, and number 10 with eCivis Inc.
All right, let's have number 7 with Switch. And good morning, and this is a 10-year contract, but for $20 million, but if you would give us some background on what it's for, thank you.
Good morning, Governor and members of the board. For the record, Dave Hawes. I'm the Deputy Administrator for the Enterprise IT Services Division of the Department of Administration. And yes, this is a 10-year contract for $20 million. That amount represents both current and projected usage that we would have at Switch. This contract is a master services agreement for the good of the state, which allows not only ourselves but other state agencies to be able to use the services within Switch. Those services, actually, this is exciting because it provides really a strategic approach to our technology within the state of Nevada. Allows us to have a much more resiliency and redundancy that we haven't had in the past. Plus, we'll be able to use the communication superhighway that's currently connected between these two facilities. And we're working to adjust our network to take advantage of that. So we're very excited about that. We also, the way the contract is set up, it will allow other Nevada municipalities to be able to access the contract from the terms and conditions of the contract. Switch is a Tier 4 facility, which means that they're certified, a world-class facility. It gives us greater protection for our data and the processing that we're able to do. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
No, thank you. Very thorough. Obviously they're a Nevada company, and I like to see us do business with Nevada companies whenever we have the opportunity. But not only are they a Nevada company, but they have a world-class facility that I'm not aware of any peers. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the other board members on master service agreement number 7?
No, Governor.
Right. Was there anything else you wanted to present?
Nope, that's
okay.
good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And let's go to master service agreement number 10. And this has to do with our grant management program.
Good morning, Governor and board members. For the record, my name is Connie Lucido. I'm with the Office of Grant Procurement Coordination and Management. Our office first released this MSA in 2013. It has those vendors expiring this month. In anticipation of that, we pushed out in late spring, an RFP to continue it for any interested vendors. This resulted in 2 potential contracts. One is Strategic Progress, which is your item number 6 on the MSA, and then this item number 10 for eCivis. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and essentially they go out and find grant opportunities for the state.
They can. That is one potential function that they could serve. A lot of contracts that have been executed under this MSA involve research and data analysis for special reports, needs assessments. They've done grant consulting for agency strategies and those sorts of things. So it provides some operational efficiencies for state agencies in ease of getting access to grant consultants, administrators, et cetera.
And this doesn't have anything to do with the contracts, but how's it going? Are we finding a lot of grant opportunities?
We're doing well. We're looking more closely at implementation and agency capacity to implement these opportunities, so that's slowed us down a little bit. But we're doing great. We're looking at some outreach opportunities and some other activities.
And, there's a comment here that says a statewide contract may be used by all state agencies and political subdivisions.
Yes.
Is there an awareness amongst all the state agencies and the political subdivisions that this resource is available to them?
This MSA is available? I would hope so, but that is something that we continue to talk about when we talk with our agencies.
No, and I ask that because they don't know what they don't know, and if they knew
Absolutely.
that there might be some opportunities out there, I would encourage some type of outreach to do that.
Thank you for that suggestion. We actually have an advisory council on federal assistance coming November 2nd, I believe it is, and that is something that I will remind the council, as well as we've been doing quite a bit of outreach to our locals and trying to create some participation with them. So I will definitely remind them of this opportunity.
All right, thank you. Keep
Thank
up
you.
the good work.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, Attorney General, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you, Governor.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no further questions, the chair will accept a motion to approve the master service agreements 1 through 10 as presented in agenda item number 12.
So moved.
The Secretary of State has moved for approval. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by the Attorney General. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 That motion passes 3-0. We'll move on to agenda item number 13, which is an approval of proposed work plan. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. Item 13 represents a new category for approval by the board this morning. Items that fall under this category are the work orders off of the $0 MSA agreements that we discussed in the last item. This particular work order for consideration by the board this morning is with Gartner Inc. for the Enterprise Resource Planning Project for replacing the state's HR and financial systems, and the work order will provide assistance to that office in getting the contract documents ready. So the particular work order is for $982,000, and if there are any other questions, either I can answer them or we have the project management office director in the audience.
I have no questions. Board members, any questions?
No, Governor.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Attorney General has moved to approve the proposed work plan presented in agenda item number 13. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Governor.
Second by the Secretary of State. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is that an aye?
Aye.
Oh, okay. That motion passes 3-0. We'll move on to agenda item number 14, an information item. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. There were 61 contracts under the $50,000 threshold approved by the clerk between August 22nd and September 18th of 2017. This item is informational only, and we did not receive any requests for additional information from any of the members.
Okay. Board member, any questions with regard to agenda item number 14?
No, Governor.
No, Governor. Thanks.
I have none as well. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item 15, department reports. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. Agenda item 15 is an informational report on the available balances in the various contingency accounts that are managed either by the Board of Examiners or the Interim Finance Committee as of September 11th, 2017. These accounts are intended to cover contingencies for the 2017-19 biennium. And I did want to provide a little comment. You usually ask about the comfort level with the balances. So I did a little bit of history because we've had a significant number of requests for the IFC contingency account. So the last three biennia, the 2011-2013 interim, in the first year we used about $2.4 million out of a just under $12 million account balance. In 2013-15, we used $6.8 million in the first year of the biennium on an account balance of $15.2. And in the 15-17 biennium, we only used a little over $100,000 out of a $12.9 million request. So the 2017-19 biennium started with $16.1 million. We have requests in our office at this particular juncture for a little over $6.6 million for the first quarter, and that excludes what we know for the Division of Forestry will come forward with requests for the firefighting season. That's what we've only got a partial request in there at this point. So it's one that we certainly have our eyes on this interim.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wells. Board members, any questions with regard to agenda item number 15?
None, Governor.
Okay. We'll move on to agenda item 16, public comment. Is there any member of the public in Carson City that would like to provide public comment to the board? I hear and see none. Is there any member of the public present in Las Vegas that would like to provide public comment to the board?
There's nobody here, Governor.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll move to agenda item 17. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
The Secretary has moved to
I second.
adjourn. The Attorney General has seconded the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.